Hey, party people, it's Jaime. Producing our podcast, Confessions of a Creative Director, is one of the most rewarding and fulfilling projects of my life. I can't believe I get to meet and talk to some of the most successful and influential creative directors from around the world. I'm thrilled by all the support and encouragement I receive from listeners everywhere. Now, as a fan of the show, I invite you to join my Patreon and become a supporter of the show. You'll help me cover the editing, hosting services, and maybe the occasional tequila soda for yours truly. If you've derived real-world value from my conversations with the world's best creatives, this is your way to help keep it going. Visit my Patreon and sign up to become a supporter today. You'll get access to additional content from the show and maybe even a few surprises. I'm looking forward to many more episodes, and I hope you'll come along for the ride with me. Visit patreon.com/confessions of a creative director to become a supporter today. That's patreon.com/confessions of a creative director. Thanks. This episode is brought to you by What's the Big Idea? An indispensable guide to becoming a kick-ass creative director by yours truly, Jaime Cabrera. Pick it up on Amazon and now available on Audible. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, Confessions of a Creative Director, the original podcast made by a creative director for creative directors, for aspiring creative directors, for creatives of all types looking to up their game by listening to and learning from the world's best. This is your podcast, and I am your host, Jaime Cabrera. On today's show, we have creative director and creative coach, Rodd Chant, all the way from Bangkok, Thailand. Rodd and I are kindred spirits who share the same passion for finding the perfect black t-shirt and for helping bring up the next generation of creative directors. Now, I've been following him on LinkedIn for some time, and a recent post really caught my eye. Rodd believes that AI won't kill all agencies, but it might destroy those that sacrifice senior creative talent in the name of innovation and efficiency. When I saw that, my ears perked up naturally. So I said, I got to have him on. So without further ado, let's get into it with Rodd Chant. Welcome to Confessions of a Creative Director. How are you?
I'm great, man. Great to connect and be online from the other side of the world. It's good to be here.
You are on the other side of the world, and you're in a very different climate right now. You tell me how hot it is in Bangkok right now. It's 7 a.m.
Well, 7 a.m. It's 38 degrees Celsius already, which I believe is somewhere around 102 Fahrenheit, 100 and something Fahrenheit.
A balmy 104, and it's humid too, right? Or no?
It's very humid. It is going to get. I looked at the weather when I got up this morning. It's going to get to 44 degrees Celsius today.
Yeah. Wow.
With high humidity. It's a sweaty place to live.
But a beautiful place, I imagine.
It's beautiful. I mean, I've lived in Singapore 3 times. Singapore gets hotter. So
this is better. Well, thanks for making the time to join the podcast. I've been following your stuff and have been wanting to connect with you. But for those who may not know, tell us a little bit about who you are, what your mission is. We seem to have similar missions in some ways, but give us kind of the tour of your career trajectory. Tell us where you've been, what you've done, and sort of what your mission is now.
Okay. I'll try and keep it brief. It's a long story, so I'll keep it as brief as possible. Originally from Sydney, Australia. I started my career there, worked for a bunch of small agencies, then ended up at McCann Erickson. From there, I went to Singapore, my first stint overseas. So I ended up being like the global creative director on Singapore Airlines, basically, which was a great gig. Then I moved to BBDO in Singapore. Then I went back to Australia, started my own small shop. Then after a few years of doing that, I got poached by Publicis to go back to Singapore to be ECD of Publicis. And from there, I got the call to go to FCB New York to be the new ECD. So I did that. Did New York for 11 years. I wasn't at FCB for 11 years, but I stayed at New York for 11 years. I also, in that time, split my time. I went back to Singapore and became ECD of a small Japanese agency based between Singapore and Tokyo. Did that, and what else? I bounced around, ended up coming to Bangkok at one stage for a while, bouncing between here and Vietnam. Back in Australia, got stuck there in the pandemic. Then, at the height of the pandemic, I got asked by a friend of mine who runs an agency in Bangkok if I would come up and help him run the agency through the pandemic, which I did as the CCO. And here I am still. I've since left that job very amicably. And now I'm working out the next thing I want to do based out of Bangkok, but working globally. So I think that's the short story. I've won a few trophy shelf ornaments along the way and all that type of stuff. So,
yeah, I can imagine. I was going through, doing my research and going through your, your history, and you've done a lot of great things. And at some point, you kind of felt like you needed to pass that sort of knowledge to the next generation. That's what I was referring to by you and me sort of being in that same sort of mission of trying to help the next generation of creatives and creative directors. And tell us a little bit about that, because I know you do coaching as well as your, as well as creative directing and writing and whatnot.
Yeah, well, I saw that there's a lot of great courses out there. There's a lot of famous courses and schools and all that out there, and some are out of reach of people. Some of them are just too expensive, some people's budgets. So I like to do two things. I've got a thing that I rebooted. I started just before the pandemic. It was called Nothing Like an Advertising School. And I got that started. The first, class, for want of a better term, went through. And then the pandemic hit, and then they shut it all down, and it was all just too hard. Everything was too hard, and, it was a bit weird. But I also was doing coaching as well at the same time, coaching people at various stages of their career. Anyway, I put a lot of that on hold during the pandemic, and when I took the CCO job, I just got really swamped and busy with doing stuff. But now I've rebooted Nothing Like an Advertising School and rebooted all my coaching. And I believe it's needed. I think I did a lot of due diligence asking around, and I felt a lot of people weren't getting a lot of mentorship in-house.
Yeah.
And that's no reflection on the leaders. A lot of them just too overwhelmed, too much to do, themselves, like running an agency, having done it so many times. It's all encompassing. I mean, it takes a lot of time, a lot of focus, and if you've got a really big creative department, it can be a struggle to do. But there should be in-house mentoring and training and all that. But I just feel there's not enough of it. So I just want to do that again and make it affordable. I'm making it part of my business. I can't set aside. It takes a lot of my time. So people say, "Oh, well, why do you charge for it?" And I go, "Well, it's actually part of my business now as well. It's time is money, and if I want to do it enough, I want to build it up into being something a bit bigger, than what I'm doing. So I do have a vision to grow it into something bigger, and I just want to provide affordable training and coaching and treat it very initially, just like I'm the ECD of an agency. I'm walking you through stuff, and I'm guiding you, and I'm advising you, and showing from my experience what I think you need to know and understand to navigate the industry. So that's part of my thing. And also, I'm a big advocate of better creative directors. I've written a few pieces. My first piece that went viral on LinkedIn was way back in 2019. I woke up one morning, and I think I was triggered by a conversation with a friend who had a creative director who was just horrible. And I sat down and wrote a little piece over a cup of coffee called "How to Be a Creative Director Without Sucking at It." And then I kind of just posted it and didn't pay attention to it. I just put it up there and went and had lunch with a friend. And then next day it was like 800,000 impressions and 10,000 likes and 600 comments. And I went, what just happened? And so it obviously struck a nerve. There obviously seems to be a lot of people that have a beef with bad creative directors. And I've worked with a few on my way up the ladder, and I think we all have. And there's no need for some of the behavior that you hear about or encounter. I mean, I always like to say to people, don't forget, there are no teenagers out there with posters of you on their bedroom walls. You write ads. You're not a rock star.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think some people need to be reminded of that sometimes. So.
Yeah. And obviously that is a big part of it, right? Is that kind of that I've talked about it as well, which is why that I think it was it may have been a reposting of that I saw recently. But that there is that kind of that God complex, right? Here comes the ECD, or here comes and that's funny that you say that, because it's like nobody's got posters of you on their wall, and so that that particular piece I remember really liking. But then you wrote something recently that's kind of affiliated to that whole topic. But this article has also gone viral. So tell us a little bit about this new one. You just posted it a couple days ago, and it's got a lot of buzz going on LinkedIn. So tell us about that piece that you wrote.
Yeah, well, it was triggered by there's a lot of conversation. I think it was, if my memory serves me correctly, the title of it was AI Won't Kill Big Agencies, Clients Will. And, there's a lot of buzz about AI about to bring the hammer down and kill most agencies and all that. And I think it will kill some or change them forever, in some good ways and in some questionable ways. So there's a lot. AI is just a tool, but it will get better, and it will remove, I think, a lot of basic work, and it will help enhance some other roles. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict exactly what's going to happen, but I think we're going to see a significant shift. So anyway, I was thinking about that, and then I thought, well, AI is not the biggest problem for agencies. I think it's clients realizing that they may not need the big mega agencies anymore. And so then I saw on my feed a post by Stephanie McCarthy, who is a CMO in the US. And she wrote a post, or a couple of posts that blew up, like just got a lot of attention. And just talking about her dissatisfaction with agencies and where she thinks they're dropping the ball and why she's tired of them. And it got a lot of chatter. I mean, you go through she's got a lot of support even from creatives and creatives and clients alike, agency people alike, saying, yeah, it's a mess. And she was pointing out that agencies used to be the champions and the place you went to for great creativity and ideas. And she's saying she's finding that less and less the case right now. She's saying it doesn't seem to be the case. The big agencies don't deliver the ideas. It's the small shops. And so she also talked about how she's noticed the ageism issue, where all the senior talent are being removed from the agencies. And while I haven't encountered this firsthand, I know a lot of people who have, and it's a terrible thing. And I think it's weird. This is something I was only realized the other day. I think it's a very Western culture thing. I could be wrong, and I'm happy to be corrected. But in this part of the world, in the Asia region, age is respected. Yeah. When you're a creative, like a lot of the creative leaders in, say, Japan, they're not young. And
is that right?
Yeah, and I just recently held a job, as a CCO, and I'm not a kid, and age wasn't even a question. It was all about my experience and what I could bring to the table, and can I help run this agency and bring in big business, which I managed to do. So she was saying she wants to see the senior talent in there, and so the problem with the agencies, and when I wrote the post, it was the mixture of, AI is not the issue. It's the clients are going to start, clients want ideas. They want ideas for their brands, and they want bigger ideas. If you remove the senior talent, who's helping the fresh talent who have just come in the door to learn how to master that art and perfect it and get better at it and better at it? Hence the coaching, the mentoring, the advising, the guiding of what a good creative director should do. So it does loop back, as you mentioned. So if they start removing all these senior talent, they're going to have a whole lot of inexperienced people who can't hit the nail on the head when it comes to an idea. Clients are going to get more and more angry and dissatisfied. Meanwhile, all those people that were showing the door have started their own little micro agencies. And guess what? they have the phone numbers of the clients, they have the emails of the clients, and they have relationships with the clients. They've had lunches with the clients. So the big agencies are creating their own worst enemies. And I feel we're at the precipice of major change in the industry again, where the big agencies. There was another article last year in Contagious magazine. I can't remember the author. I'm sorry, but it was the gentleman that wrote the book. He wrote one book, Madison Avenue Manslaughter or something like that, and then he wrote another one, I think, called Madison Avenue Makeover, which was focused on Huge, the agency Huge, and how they wanted to sort of reinvent the process. But he wrote a great piece in Contagious saying that, he believes big agencies are just going to fall apart, and the holding companies are going to be seen as less relevant if they keep making missteps. And Wall Street will take notice, because the only people who care about holding companies are Wall Street and not many other people.
Right.
So I just feel that the industry hasn't changed much since Mad Men. Like, it really hasn't. Like, I mean, I know you've worked a lot of agencies. I've worked in big agencies on 3 continents, and I can tell you they're all the same. Like, there's nothing different except the logo and the address, and they all basically operate the same. There's nothing different, and it hasn't changed forever. So I was in the music business before advertising, and I saw significant change that technology brought to the music business almost overnight. Like, suddenly you had digital audio workstations, DAWs, where you could record an album in your living room. You didn't need a big studio anymore. So we saw studios going bankrupt. We saw musicians taking control of what they did with their songwriting, and releases. They could suddenly release stuff online. I still remember there was a band called, I think, Clap Hands, Say Yeah was the name of the band. And they famously led the charge when MySpace came out. And I remember them making news, like, this is going way back, where they built up a fan base on MySpace and started selling their music directly to their fans. They were one of the first ones to do this.
Yeah.
And they sold 100,000 music downloads or whatever or direct CD. I don't know what they sold, but they said 100,000 sales. And that was direct. And they said, we've never made this much money in our lives, So that shift. Now, I'm not saying, creatives, we should be creative in our own products and brands, but it's another story.
Yeah.
I just think that the smaller agencies are the ones that can be nimble, they can pivot, and they don't need shiny big offices. Like, clients don't care about that. They want the work. It's like, you can have the sexiest office in the world. It doesn't matter if you haven't got the ideas.
Well, I want to put a pin in that, because I do want to talk about that. Let's go back to what is in your mind, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but in your mind, what is the reason that these agencies are letting go of all this senior talent?
Purely shareholders, money.
It's just the money, right?
It's just the money. And
too expensive.
Yeah. Even Stephanie quoted that in one of her pieces. She's saying, it's because they cost too much. And she stated, I would rather, as a client, pay more money to make sure that you got the best talent available working on my brand. So they're cutting their nose off to spite their face. I'm sure she's not the only CMO who thinks this way. And from all the comments, you can see she's not. There was a lot of support for what she was saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, as you have more experience in the business, the salaries increase, and rightfully so, right? If you're a wealth of knowledge and experience, I mean, you should be rewarded for that. But there's I'm sure other ways to cut down on. There's other ways that they could make up the difference, right? Which probably means maybe not having as big of a profit margin, right? I know that it's like sometimes you're shooting for 25% profit. I mean, that's in any other business, that's crazy. I think from what I know about other businesses, and every year it's more and more and more and more, right? Every year you have to project more. And I mean, there's got to be a better way to do that, but the easiest way, right? The biggest line item is like, who do we have right at the top? and how can we, let's get rid of a few of those senior people. And that's just a shame. How do you think that the agencies, do we need to encourage clients to speak up more? Because at a certain point, like this Stephanie woman mentioned, they're going to notice, right? So how do we, kind of bring about this idea of like, hey, clients, you guys need to speak up and make sure that these senior people aren't getting, axed?
I think, yeah. I mean, clients can play a role in what they're asking for and what they should be demanding from their agency. The problem with the agencies that are owned by holding companies is that they have to report to the holding companies X amount of profit. So it's a
Right.
holding company, so we want this much. Like I'm not going to name the agency, but I've worked for a lot of big agencies with holding companies. But I remember being made privy to just how much we had to give back to the holding company.
Yeah.
It was impossible for us to make a profit at the agency. It was physically impossible. Like once all the overheads were paid, there was nothing left after the money was given back to the holding company. So, and then you get a phone call saying, well, you need to find X amount of money in your budget, which means cutting people. I mean, it's that simple. Like you get the phone call and it's like, no, you need to find this much money like now. And then you have to bring out the axe. And it's a horrible thing. I mean, I got tired of it. I didn't enjoy that anymore, like, because it was all about the money. It was less about the creativity. And that's why after my last really big job, I opted to only work full time. I would freelance, but I would only wanted to become fully vested in something that was small because it was hands-on, it was personal, weren't beholden to the holding companies. We had more flexibility to do things, etc. So I think that, you look at all the overheads. Okay, the pandemic was an eye-opener. I remember all these people suddenly realized, oh, you can work remotely. Well, the funny thing is, I was working remotely all of 2017, 2018 with a major client, which is the client's product is used in every agency and design firm and everything. I was making content for Wacom, the tablet company.
Yeah.
And I directed a lot of those spots. I wrote and directed a lot of it, most of it. And I did it remotely. We set up an iPad with me directing in a room in another country. And it worked. And I'm thinking, and then suddenly the pandemic comes in. Oh, wow, we could try this. I was doing that years ago. It's not hard. So during the pandemic, suddenly we had work from home. And then suddenly, agencies go, oh, yeah, no, it's okay. You can work from home and all that. And we're going to have this policy forever going forward. But then I'm guessing the bean counters got involved and they're going, well, we've got these 5-year leases, 10-year leases that are costing a fortune. You should come back to the office now. And the people are going, don't want to come back to the office.
I know.
So then they're sort of going, well, you need to. So they're holding on to these big shiny offices, which they don't really need. I'm sorry, but you just don't really need them. Like you can have there's this famous example of this, and it happened way before the pandemic. There's a little company, well, not little, called Automatic. They have a thing called WordPress. Right? They created WordPress. They own WordPress. They have something like, I'm going to get this wrong, 800 to 1,000 staff worldwide. They don't have one office, and they haven't had one since about 2015. They don't believe in them. They tried it. They said no one wanted to come to the office. And so they closed their last office, which was like a mailing address with about 50 seats in it in San Francisco, if I can remember. There was a great interview with Matt Mullenweg, who is the founder of Automatic, and he talks about it because no one wanted to come, so there was no point having that overhead. So you've got a business that is effectively creative business, and they don't have offices, but they're making $1 billion a year. It's like $1 billion company. And so imagine their profit margins when you don't have all the office space. So I think, the other thing, I was interviewed in 2017, 2018 on a podcast about my view of what a creative company should be structured like.
Yeah.
And I still believe in it now, and I'm going to do it again. It should be like a band. Like, think of a band. And this is the example I've used too often, but look at U2. It's 5 people. It's 4 on stage and a manager. They don't even live in the same countries, generally. It's a billion-dollar company, U2. It is a business. It is a creative business. They hire people when they need them. They don't have multiple story offices that they go into every day. They bring in the people they need for touring, for recording, for photography, for video. Yeah, sure, they've got assistants, but that's they're not contributing to the process. They're there to help them get there through their day-to-day. And it's another billion-dollar business. I think I looked up U2 and it was worth about $1 billion or something like that. But
wow,
it's, again, why do we add on all these things that cause costs that you don't need? And so the clients are paying for all that.
Right.
Yeah,
do you think, I mean, the office space thing is interesting to me, right? Because at a certain point, it's just a sunk cost, right? If nobody wants to come back to work, it's a sunk cost, and that sucks. Obviously, it sucks if you're a company and you signed, these long-term leases, but you're not going to make any. You may as well just eat it because people don't want to come back. And you might as well try to figure out a way to get out of it or lease it to somebody. I don't know, but it's a sunk cost. You're not gonna make more money. I don't think if you force people to come back. It's just the money is you got to pay for it anyway, right? So it's a sunk cost. Just figure out a way to get out of it or do something different with it. I don't know. But so I get the idea that clients may not need, the big sexy offices and sort of all those, things that come from, being associated or working with a big agency. But what about the name, right? Because you're mentioning, that this is a great opportunity for senior creatives to maybe go off and start their own thing. I still get the sense that a lot of clients want that big name. They want to, be able to say, like, we're working with, Wyden, or we're working with whoever, the hot shop may be. They want that, right? Because if you're talking about two, let's say it's two senior creatives that left and started their own thing, they're still, they may have a great reel and they may have done a lot of great work, but they don't have that name. And that sometimes makes people nervous. Do you agree, or?
Yeah, well, it depends on the size of the client and who the client is. I mean, I agree. Like, you're going to have mega brands who want a certain level of servicing, client servicing and hand-holding, for want of a better term.
Yeah.
When they've got big campaigns and all that. Now, I get that. And the bigger shops, they've got the more of the people, etc. So, but I just was told by a very good friend of mine, I'm not going to name brands and names, I don't want to get her in trouble, but a certain mega brand in a certain country just hired this little collective of freelancers to do their most recent work. And
really?
the work's amazing. And this mega brand works with some of the best agencies in the world. And so they are going to do it. Like, they might go, okay, we might have this global campaign rollout through our big agency. You can, do all that, but maybe we get the work done somewhere else. We get the creative ideas do somewhere else. And then the big agency becomes a distribution network or something to manage the process. I mean, that could start happening. That's a possibility. So the big agencies end up losing the creative side of it and end up becoming media and management and, distribution outlets. Yeah,
sort of the commodity part, right? Because a lot of that stuff is becoming commoditized, right? Like, I haven't done it myself, but I know that, you can go and directly buy media, right? Without having a media company. All these other things are sort of becoming commodities, but what is still the most valuable thing is the creative.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and the agencies stopped charging.
I personally like that. What's that?
The agencies stopped charging for creative a long time ago, basically. And then they got in trouble when they separated media from the agency because they were making good money off the media. And then they lost that and they went, whoops. And another thing that, the whole charging by the hour and timesheet thing is ineffective and doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And most of them are lies. I mean, sorry, but they are. There's no truth in the timesheet. It's the most. I remember joking with a bunch of freelancers. We were sitting around one day in New York, and I jokingly said, the most creative thing I've done this week is fill out a timesheet. And it was because even the people in finance said to me, just make it up. It was like, just make it up, because there wasn't much happening at the time. And I said, I can't make it up. And it was like, they said, well, you're going to have to do something. I went, I don't know what to do. It was weird. I finally found a way to make it legit. I sort of found something. I went, all right, I'm going to just barrel into this project here. And if it's not needed, it's not needed. But luckily something good came out of it. But I was struggling because it was a slow week and there wasn't much happening. I mean, what am I going to do? So I think they should. I think charging for creative needs to be rethought.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that talk about this, right? Chris Doe, I've had on my show, and he deals with kind of the freelancer sort of folks, right? But he's also talks about bigger companies. But the whole idea of like charging for the value of something as opposed to the as opposed to the hours. But again, that's hard, right? That's hard when you're dealing with a big company who wants to know exactly what are they buying. How many, what are we buying? Well, it's these people. Okay, great. And how many hours are they putting in? It's really a complicated issue, but I agree that there's got to be some other better solution for it.
Well, when I started my first ever agency, and I hadn't run an agency by then. I just left being a creative director in an agency in Singapore. I hadn't been an ECD yet or anything like that. And I went back to Australia and started my own small shop. And I luckily, an ex-CEO gave me some advice on things to do and this, that, and the other, and gave me a bit of coaching. But I had one particular client where suddenly the workload was excessive, like really quickly, and quite regular what they needed. They wanted X amount of these print ads. We wanted this, we wanted that, had to have this done and that done, and a lot of print collateral and a whole lot of different stuff. So I eventually went, okay, I put together a menu of prices, of set fees for each piece, because I knew how long it took us to do it, and I knew how much time was involved. And I said, this costs you this much, this costs you this much, this costs you. And they loved it. And the agency was making really good money. And they literally could call up and say, I want one of those, two of those, three of those, and six of those. Okay, cool. And they knew exactly what they were getting, and they knew exactly how much it was going to cost. And I knew what my profit margins were, and I was happy. And I did it with a few clients. And I went, why aren't, because a lot of it, we know what's involved. If you're going to, right. We can say, all right, give me a couple of days to think about concepts or something. And then let's put together some mock-ups, send them over, go and present them and show them, and then move on and do it. And there were options. I built in options. Either we do original photography, or we use one of your library images, which I'd shot anyway for them, or supervised, the photography. So we say, okay, if it's one of your shots, well, then the shot doesn't cost anything. If you want a shot, it's going to cost this. And it worked. So, and this was a long time ago, and it worked. So this is 20 years ago. So yeah. I just think we need to rethink it. There's also other agencies doing amazing different things. I don't know if you've heard of 10 Days in London.
No. 10 Days in where? Where are they?
In London. So it's three brothers who all worked for great agencies. From memory, they worked for like Wyden and Mother and stuff like that. And one of them is like an ECD. One of them, I think, is more project management production. And the other one does music and sound design. I've got my memory's not failing me. Now, they've got an amazing offer. From idea to on screen, 10 days for commercials.
Wow.
And they're doing it, and it's working. And they said, look, they said there's too many people in agencies. There's too many people getting in the way, and it doesn't need to be this way. So, and they're, after the call, look them up. They're smart. It's like clients want stuff done, and it doesn't take. If everyone's on board on both sides about agreeing at certain timelines and processes, it doesn't take forever. Like I remember joining a certain agency at one stage, and there was this spot that had been the concept had been approved, just commercial. I left the agency 18 months later, and it was just being made. So, and it wasn't a mega spot at all. It wasn't a mega spot. It wasn't like big production, like Cecil B. DeMille production. It was a basic spot, but it was 18 months before it was finally made. That's a bit silly. I mean, in this day and age,
I agree with you. I agree with you, but do you think that part of that even getting back to the office space thing, right, is that all those things, right, all those trappings are basically ways to hide ways to make money, right? So it's like, well, if we got to add this, right? We're paying for this beautiful office space, so we're going to tack that on plus a little bit more, right? For us, so it's a way to hide, money in a way, right?
Oh yeah, and I mean, even referencing Stephanie again in her pieces, she was saying she's tired of agencies bringing her extra services she doesn't want, and they keep trying to ram them down her throat, and she doesn't want them. She's saying, I don't need this. I just want the ideas. I want the creative. And they, we can't do that unless you do this and you buy this and you do that. And she's like, well, I don't want that. So they're really doing themselves a disservice by, the clients want a certain thing. Give the client the certain thing. Agencies used to be the place where, clients knew they could go to that's where the funny people were, the creative people were, the wild cards, the square pegs in the round holes. That's where they all were. They were in advertising, and advertising. Aging myself a little bit. It used to be really fun. It used to be a lot of fun, and it was crazy and wild. I mean, I got into it from the music business, and I was okay, this isn't bad. I don't have to change my uniform. I can still wear black all the time, and And it's kind of funny. And we used to, back in those days, we'd go to lunch and we wouldn't come back, but we'd go to lunch with a notepad and just write over lunch and laugh and joke and have fun and walk out of there with all these commercials already written. Like, we'd had so much fun, and we could write them in a day. So we could do it, and then I just think a lot of the fun seems to be gone.
Yeah, but let me ask you something though, just for the sake of thinking this through. Was that in itself, having the luxury of time, sort of a benefit of that old model of, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So are we talking out of the both sides of our mouth in a way? Like, was it part of that, or was it you just think that it was a different? It was just a different vibe. You know what I'm saying?
We did have the luxury of time, but like I just said, we would go to lunch and write 4 ads over lunch, 4 TV commercials over lunch. So we could do it in a day. It was possible.
I see. Okay.
But I mean, creatives are guilty of waiting till the end of the deadline, So back in those days, you'd have 6 weeks to write a TV commercial sometimes. So, 6 weeks. You start on week 5. It's like but you've been thinking about it.
You've been thinking about it, yeah. That's the thing that's hard for people that don't do what we do to understand that is part of the thing, right? Is that you're just. I always tell people, like, just put it on your brain and let it sit there, right? And that kind of is what you're doing, even though you're not actively, sitting there writing stuff. It is part of the process for sure.
Yeah, and sometimes it's great to have that luxury. It really is. But there are times when, I never trust the first idea anyway. I want to see what else comes. Like, sometimes you will have this spark of brilliance and you'll go, wow, that's it. But you don't want to trust that. You want to keep thinking. And so having a bit more time, I agree, does help with that. And, but we are unfortunately in the age of now. Like, we live in an industry of communicate now, and social media has created that, and
absolutely
internet, everything. So, whilst I agree, yes, sometimes having luxury of time is an amazing thing. we unfortunately have to evolve with the industry and what it is, which means we've got to think faster. There's just no two ways about it. You can't avoid it. It's like, no, we have to do this. And it's, it's like a band insisting to record only on, tape. And, well, okay, yeah, but it's going to bring some issues, but I guess you could do it, but it's going to be time consuming and costly. And if the tape could get destroyed easily, which used to happen back in the day, tapes would accidentally get erased and lose a whole recording session. So record companies are going to be like, I know. So, yeah, it would be great to have a lot of time. But if these guys in London are doing it in 10 days, I've looked at their work and they're doing it. They're pulling it off. So
I think that if everybody, and this is, be curious to hear what you think about this, is everything is moving much faster, and it has to, because like you said, you're kind of advertising and marketing in real time now because of, everything's got to go. What I find is that can be very fun too, because you could be in a position where you're not overthinking. But I think where the disconnect comes is sometimes maybe, while clients may say that they want to move that quickly, and then, on the agency side, you do move that quickly, then sometimes there's a delay on that end. So then you can't move as fast as you would, and then it becomes not fun. Does that make any sense? Because I think if we were all on the same page and like, okay, we got to get this done in 10 days, and both sides are on the same page about that, then it could be really fun and it could be really fast, and it's like, okay, let's move on to the next thing. But I find like there's sometimes a disconnect.
Well, there is, and everybody, as I said, has to be on board. Everybody has to agree to the process, otherwise it's not going to work. But you look at say someone like Saturday Night Live. I mean, they record all their skits in a short period of time. It doesn't take them 6 weeks to do that.
Right.
News reports happen it's 1 week. News reports happen at the time they're happening, so it's real time stuff. I remember reading an article about Foo Fighters. I think they did a whole album in 1 week, recorded an entire album in 1 week, with new songs.
I think that's the one they did in Austin or something like that.
Right, 1 week, and you can do it. And so I think the problem is, and maybe this comes back to what I'm talking about with the sea of people that get involved in an agency sometimes. If you've got 25 people trying to have an opinion on one piece of work, well, then it's not going to happen fast. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to. You need to cull the numbers of who's involved and whose hands and eyes and ears and opinions are going to touch the work. And when you can do that, it's like, okay, imagine this is rather stupid, but if you're on a plane screaming between LA and Bangkok, and there's 2 or 3 very capable people sitting right at the front of that plane, getting that plane there safely, not really sure they want to go into the back of the plane and ask 250 people's opinions on how they should get there. I think they know how they're going to get there. I think they know what they're doing. And maybe they should be trusted with knowing what they're doing, even though Ted sitting down in 33C has probably played a simulator game once or twice. He's read an aviation magazine. He's watched a few documentaries. Ted thinks he knows some things, but you know what? The pilots know a little bit more. So I think leave it to the people who are responsible for getting it done, and don't have a cast of thousands get involved. And then you will be able to do the work faster. It's that simple.
Yeah. And and in some ways a little bit more, more of a focused vision, right? Because design by committee, ends up looking like my old boss used to say, a dog's breakfast, right? Exactly. What I like to think about it as is like let's get people involved. We can get a lot of people involved at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then as we go through the process, it's gonna narrow down to a few key decision makers, because otherwise it's just not. I mean, even just the visual itself, right? It's like if you went straight down like this, there's no focus there. I mean, you got to some people, somebody has to make the decision, right? Otherwise, it ends up being not focused and not, probably not effective either.
Well, you just hit one of the key points from circling back to that piece I wrote, and then I did an update on it recently, the how to be a creative director without sucking at it. One of the most important things, and I always write about this, is make a decision. You need to make a decision. Like,
right.
CD can also stand for creative decisions. And if you're not making decisions, and hard decisions, that you could be wrong, and guess what? You will be sometimes. Yeah. But that's part of the job. But the problem is you get a lot of people in a leadership role who don't want to take responsibility. And if you don't want to take responsibility, you shouldn't be in the role. So you've got to stand there and go, this is the way we're going to go. We're going to go take this path. We're going to do this. You guys get back to doing that stuff, and let's focus on this. And that's how you end up having people going home at the end of the day, having a life, not burning the midnight oil. I always say that late nights and overworking in agencies is due to somebody not doing their job, and it's somebody higher up the ladder. It's somebody not making decisions.
Absolutely.
And it's always like I said, multiple agencies on 3 continents. I've seen it too many times. It's all because someone won't make a tough decision. And so again, it comes back to, this again cycles back to getting rid of the senior talent. So if you've got agencies that don't have the people that have the knowledge and the ability to make hard and fast decisions, you're going to end up with people, it's going to end up like herding kittens. You've got all these things going on around you, and nobody knows where to go and what to do. And we're chasing that, we're doing that. There's because you haven't got the person that goes, no, that's what we do. Let's get that done. Bang, done, finished. Let's move on to the next. And that's what's missing without senior talent.
So let me ask you this potentially tough question. Okay, so something's got to give. So what we're saying is don't start at the senior talent. So it's one senior leader or 5 juniors, a couple of people sort of in the middle of their career. I mean, that's the only other option, right? And is that the best option? What in your mind is, because that would suck too, right? Because then now you have people that aren't maybe getting opportunities to learn. They're falling off the way. So what is? I mean, how do we get to? You
have to have really experienced senior people at the top. At least one. Like, again, it comes back to what you're saying about, you don't see statues of committees, and you don't ask, the other point, the other fun one is, they asked a committee to design a horse and they came back with a camel.
Right.
So you want one decision maker who really knows what they're doing at the helm creatively. That person also needs a seat at the big table. That's another important thing, I believe, in agencies. If there's nobody sitting alongside the CCO and everyone else, CFO, who's got a creative title, then creativity is not important to that agency. It's that simple. I had a friend of mine tell me a horrible story from a very big agency, and again, I won't name, but he became the ECD, and he reported to the CFO. Now, I just sat there, he told me over a coffee, and I just kept shaking my head like, what? And, he didn't report to a CCO, he reported to a CFO. And I just went, how's that? And it was a major agency. And I'm like, really? So that's when I thought, this industry's in trouble. So you've got to have somebody creatively at the top who can help make tough decisions and help steer the department and make the hardcore decisions. You need that middle ground of senior talent that have got, good experience. They're not ready to lead the agency, but they've got years under their belt and they know what they're doing, and they can be left. You can delegate to them, and delegation is another thing that I think a lot of creative directors just don't get, or not, a lot, but many. And then, so you can delegate to some of them, and then they help nurture the new and up and coming talent and everything else, as well as the leader also has to chime in and help lead, like educate, mentor, and guide.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you've got enough people sitting in the next step below that leader, then but you don't, that's a simple structure, but that's how it used to be done.
Right,
that's how it should be done.
you gotta, so is the answer just less people overall, but a good mix of those experiences? Like, you know what I mean? Like, because there's something, I'm just pretending to be, an agency, principal, and saying, well, something's got to give here. We gotta increase. So what do we do? Is it just less people overall that are better coached, better mentored, better directed than having, a bunch of people and not having that kind of, really good mentorship and direction?
Yeah, I think, and it's going to come down to head counts no matter what, because it's all money. But I've been at agencies where, you walk into a room, and I'll walk into a meeting room with, say, one of my senior creatives for a meeting, when I'm in ECD, and there'll be 12 account people sitting there, and what are you all doing here? And they go, well, this is the account director, this is the account manager, this is the assistant account manager, this is the assistant account director. And I'm like, okay. And my response would be, well, I've brought one of my team with me because we communicate with each other. So we're going to go back and tell everyone what needs to be told. So you guys obviously don't communicate very well, and we're in the communication business. So how does that work? So there's
that's funny because, in my mind, in the conversation that we've been having, I've just been strictly thinking about the creative side, right? And those dollars and that headcount. But that's right. You're bringing up this whole the whole other side of the business, right? And then the whole, if you're at a big agency, it's like account, production, and then creative, right? I mean, and strategy, if you're thinking that's separate from creative, maybe. So there's a bunch of other people that we haven't even really talked about, right? Are they heavy?
Exactly.
Are they heavy on that side? Is that the place to go instead of losing senior creative talent?
Well, yeah. I mean, my first real ECD I worked under in Australia, he had a great method for the agency, and he was very strict, and he sat at the big table next to the chairman, etc. So he took creativity very seriously. But his rule was every project was broken into thirds. So strategy and planning got a third of the time, account got a third of the time, and creative got a third of the time involved. So nobody had more time than anyone else, right? To make it all very diplomatic, etc. And that's how it worked. And he brought in a little rule that we had like a 1-day right of refusal on a brief. If we felt that it just wasn't right, wasn't working, we got a day to digest it and then go back and say there's holes in it, or it doesn't feel right, or something, etc. But you had 1 day to say this isn't going to work, which I thought was fair enough. But having the equal amount of time, also he had an even balance of creative people to account to everyone else. So it was even. Everything was even. But then you'll get into, a certain agency I was at, where there was 1,500 staff, 150 were creatives.
Wow.
I mean, okay, how does those mathematics work out?
Right.
It's like, so I think you can look at it's not just the creative side. We have to look at everywhere. So, all right, well, why are we so imbalanced in numbers here? And what are we doing? And again, this comes back to AI, where I think there will be jobs that are going to be replaced on all sides when it comes to AI. It's not just creatives. There's going to be, there's a great Michio Kaku, who is a physicist, brilliant guy out of NYU, and he was talking about AI and tech and everything else a while back, and he said any middle management jobs are going to disappear. Right? They're just going to go. They're finished. So eventually they're going to get wiped out. So there's going to be, it's not just the creative side. There's going to be a lot of other sides of the industry that are going to find out they don't have a role anymore.
Yeah.
And again, I just don't feel that you just need so many people. I mean, it's not rocket science. We're not sending people on missions to Mars here. We're writing ads. It's like, we got to stop with this rocket science approach. And this secret, a friend of mine says, "Oh yeah, selling the mystery secret sauce." It's like, no, come on, let's get serious here.
Doesn't exist.
No,
So
it's yeah.
what's interesting about the example that you gave of the guys and the brothers in London, right?
Yeah.
In some ways, they've kind of like productized their offering, right? It's like it's super easy to understand, right? It's like 10 days. You give us, this is what it costs. 10 days, we'll be done. Do you think that's gonna be more of a trend of kind of shops and studios coming up that way and saying, hey, this is what we do, this is how we do it, this is our thing?
I believe so. I think in some elements you're going to have to look at productization. I think it's going to happen. Not everyone, but I think some smart people are going to rethink. I'm looking at it, how to integrate it somehow into what I want to do next. There's also subscription-based services for creative as well.
Yeah, and I've thought about that too.
There's this guy, he's got an agency, one-person agency called Design Joy. And he's a one-person operation who runs a fully subscription-based service. He's turning over $1 million a year, this guy in the States.
Wow.
And one-person operation doing design, all subscription-based. He only has, I think, at any given time, 16 clients total. They can only give him one job at a time, and they pay X amount per month, and he's killing it. And his only overhead is, well, he doesn't have offices. He works out of his home.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
what makes it's interesting, right? Because I would call that, and there's something about, I mean, it's the marketing within the marketing, right? What we're describing is sort of a retainer, but we're calling it a subscription model because my guess is there's no long-term contract. You can pulse in and out. I'm subscribing for 3 months and then I'm not going to subscribe. So there's things that are making it.
Attractive.
Right, but it's innovation and it's thinking about things differently. And in order to do that, I guarantee, I'm sure this guy doesn't. Well, you said it's just the one guy, but he doesn't have. I'm sure he's not renting a space. Probably he's doing it out of his house. He's not adding all this additional overhead. Right? It's just like, how do I make things easy for the clients to be able to say, yeah, I'll subscribe. It's much less than hiring an agency, and I can. After 3 months, I can, unclick the button and I'm unsubscribed.
Absolutely. He walks through his whole system. He doesn't care if anyone copies him. He's fine. And he goes, he works from home. You can opt out at any time. You can say, okay, I don't want to continue after this month. Okay, fine. He works with them on Trello. There are no meetings, not allowed to have a meeting. That doesn't exist.
Wow.
It's all done online. They send requests through Trello.
Yeah.
One project at a time only. There's all these rules involved. And they're going like, I think some of his fees might be something like over $5,000 a month, right? Fees, 5 to 7,000, maybe. I can't remember. And so, and 16 clients at a time. He's doing all right. And so he's got this system where it's one job at a time, one project at a time, one request at a time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's all these rules. And they interviewed, or there was in one part of one client talking about it or shared their information. I've seen a few interviews and that with this guy. And he said clients love it because they're going, well, for us to hire a full-time designer is going to cost more than $5,000 a month that can do the work. And this is how much work we've got, so we can't justify that. But we can justify spending $60,000 a year easily. That we've got that in the budget. But that's not going to get us a designer of that level that we need to be able to go to their office and say, can you do this now? And so they go, it's better to have this guy. And it just makes sense. So I think that you will see more of that. And going back to, say, the small shops, and you mentioned earlier about the name and the comfort. No, not every client is a mega-sized client. But there's a lot of clients out there that have good budgets that are not the big mega brands of the world. But some of the mega brands, as I said, and I can't say who, but, brought in a bunch of freelancers to do their most recent campaigns. And that blew my mind because this brand works with one of the hottest agencies. So you sort of go, okay, that's a sign.
Yeah.
And don't forget, Wyden and Kennedy once were not a name. And when they started, they weren't a name.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
there were
You
two
gotta start
guys sitting
somewhere.
in a room. So you got to start somewhere. So I just think that innovation will change things, and like people thinking outside the box, which is what we're supposed to be good at. So.
Right. And and I think if I remember correctly, I mean, I want to say that even didn't Wyden lay off some folks here recently, some creative folks, right? So
I think
they're not immune
of their people. I think there's something.
Do
like
you
it was a
think
figure.
that's
pretty?
So? Yeah, it was a big chunk, I think, right?
Yeah, 20%. I think.
So during the pandemic, right? And I think we're starting to see this, and we've both been kind of talking about it, that the clients are sort of, they're I thought it was going to happen a lot faster, but I thought that clients were going to be like, wait a minute. So during the pandemic, we couldn't do any shoots. We couldn't do a lot of things that we normally do, but we were still able to put together a campaign using iPhone footage or recycling stuff that we had, or doing some, just make it a motion graphic spot, or all these things, right? So it's like, hey, agency, remember back in the day, it would take 6 months, but we were able to do it really fast this time. Like, can we do it like that? Why can't we do it like that all the time? And I really thought that it was going to happen a lot faster. It seems like it's kind of happening a little bit, but I thought it would have happened a lot quicker. You think that clients have just gone back to, now that there's not that pressure, they've just gone back to the old way? Or
I just think change. This industry isn't renowned for fast change. I think change is happening, and people are realizing everything you've just said. I mean, like I said, I was doing it in 2017, 2018. I was producing work from different countries all the time. I mean, that again showed them that, we don't need to go to your fancy office to make stuff happen. We can hop on a call. Now, I know it takes a lot of the personalization out of it and all that, and I get that. And, I think if I was to say, if I was holding onto a lease of a place, depending on the structure of the office, I'd say, turn it into a restaurant, make money out of it, bring in a great chef, and all your staff come and eat there for free and hang out, and you have meetings. You have a staff table that you come and have meetings, and you sit down. And if you want to come to the office, come in and have a lunch with other people from the office. But the place is making money. Now, that's probably the dumbest idea I've ever come up with. But I'm just trying to say that they've got to rethink how you do this stuff. What could you do? And I know most Midtown Manhattan offices are not going to turn into restaurants and all that. I get that. But,
sure.
But there's got to be some other ways of thinking about this.
Well, and then, more living space. I mean, especially in a city like New York, right? You need definitely more living spaces. And I know it's a lot easier said than done, but yeah, I agree. There's got to be probably better. But it's the whole sunken cost fallacy. It's like, well, we're already paying for it. We have to do it. I'm like, well,
yeah. Well, that's not the staff's fault.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. They, saying, you got to come back to work, and the best staff is saying, no, I don't want to. And they're going, well, you have to. I don't want to. So then they're losing those people, because it's not the staff's fault that you have a 10-year lease on. So it's not their problem.
Yeah.
It's really not their problem.
Yeah.
Do you want good people or don't you? Retain the good people, create a good culture, make it flexible, bring in people that can help mentor them and bring them up to speed and help them grow their careers. And you may see happier clients. But, the whole thing when I wrote that piece, and like I said, going back to Stephanie's pieces, the reaction says a lot. When you write a piece that touches a nerve and you see the reactions, you go, a lot of people are thinking about this. There's a lot of people that this is on their mind right now. So I know I'm not the only one.
Yeah. The thing that made my ears perk up when I saw that was, I start to think about, I'm not a spring chicken. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm like, am I on the chopping block? Do I need to start thinking about, what's going to happen? Am I going to get, kind of phased out here? And, I'm sure there's a lot of creatives that are thinking that too.
But here's the thing that when I think about that, and I've had other friends say that, I go, okay, why is it that advertising has an age problem? Because other creative businesses don't. The art world, there are actors that started when they were late. There are authors that started when they were, late in life.
Yeah.
There are people that only found their stride after their 50s, in their creative journey. But there's some problem with advertising, and it's a money thing. It's all about the money, because the more experience you got, the older you get, you're paid a lot more money. That's just part of the thing, the issue for the people in the finance department. So but I also think that a lot of creative people have to be careful, very careful, about not trying to, and I want to be careful how I say this, I'm not trying to insult anyone, but not evolving, not evolving their careers.
Sure.
And to them, there are people that still don't know how to use Instagram,
Right.
or, and I go, well, you're not really helping yourself here. You're not, you should be out there no matter what your age. Go and shoot stuff like your phone. You can shoot a movie on your phone now. You can, you can take amazing photos. You can do this. You can do that. There's for example of creatives, a shout out to someone I like, and Jason Peterson, who is an ECD out of Chicago. He's got his own small agency now. But Jason started taking photos originally on his phone. I believe now he uses a Leica. But Jason is an ECD who has 1 million followers on Instagram. Right?
Wow.
And that's an ECD.
Yeah.
So not many ECDs have 1 million followers on Instagram. And it's all for his photography. He takes beautiful black and white photos. But he's the same age, and he's going, I'm still having fun.
Yeah.
He's cut from the same cloth as me, both ex-punk rock musicians. So he's not stopping. And I just think you can age yourself out of a business. I'm not saying that others aren't pushing people out at all. I'm not saying that at all.
Right.
And there are people that are being pushed out. But I've written before about you've got to make sure you remain relevant in any industry. Like, you've got to move with the times. You've got to evolve. You can't say, well, I'd prefer it to be like the old days. Well, yeah, that'd be fun, but it's not happening.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to something that we talked about very, very early on in the conversation, is this, this kind of like, affect that maybe some ECDs or creative directors have, of like, that they think they know everything, right? So when you I think, tell me what you think about this, when you are a true creative director, right, and you're not trying to make it about yourself, you should be able to go, hey, listen, I don't understand 100% of what you're telling me about this idea, but what I know about it, here's what I would do to make it better. Right, based on my experience doing all kinds of things, right? I don't understand this exact technology that you're telling me about, or this person that you want to work with, or whatever, but I kind of recognize this is an interesting idea. Here's what I would do to make it better. When you take yourself out of it, right? But I think a lot of senior creatives don't like that, right? They want to, I don't get it. I don't get it. Well, you're not supposed to get it. You're not the target.
Exactly.
But you should be able to know. You should be able to recognize something about the idea being interesting, and being able to still coach them to make whatever that idea is better.
Yeah, I think the creative director's role, if you don't get it, if there's something which is kind of sad if they don't get it, I think to be a good creative director, you've got to be across all culture, all shifts in everything, from whether it's movies and music and film and art and street art and fashion, and just stay. I read Hypebeast more than I read any advertising publication. I prefer to look at stuff that's happening in the world and certain cultures and scenes, rather than just reading about advertising. So you've got to get outside of your bubble. And I think a good creative director's job is, they should be able to look at it. Is it a good idea? Like, is there something about this, even though I don't understand it, does it seem like a good idea? Is it on brand? Is it going to do the job for the brand? Because that should be your job, is saying, well, is it going to do it what the client wants to achieve? Is it going to do that? So, and you've got to trust a bit of your gut and go, while I don't really get it, if you did this to it to make sure the brand thing is okay in it, then let's go and present it.
Yeah.
Don't do the whole. I don't like creative directors who say, no, I don't get it, do something else. I mean, they're the worst. They're the worst creative directors in the business, and there's too many of them. You've got to have an open mind, because then you're not very creative. So if somebody shows you something that you've never seen before, you should be excited. Go, oh, wow, okay, that's made me uncomfortable, but there's probably a reason for that. And also the age thing. I mean, I remember once early in my career, I almost got in trouble with a big client, a global client, and we did a music track for a new TV spot, and the client, who was 40-something, said, I don't get it. This isn't my kind of music. And I said, well, then I did my job then, didn't I? Because it's written for 16-year-olds. It's not written for you. So, and I remember the CEO staring at me like, why are you talking to the client like this? And I ended up winning the battle. Because he kind of went, you've got a point. It's not my kind of music. I don't get it, but I trust that you understand it and you get it and you get what they're listening to. So I think you've got to keep relevant. You've got to keep across technology, art, literature, anything, and have an open mind when you're showing something that you just simply don't get. Because look at some of the stuff that blows up on TikTok or whatever.
Right.
Like, you might look at it and go, okay, but it worked. It's like, okay,
right.
So, and I think an open and curious mind is two of the best things a creative director should have.
Yeah, and check a little bit of the ego too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Again, it goes back to, there are no teenagers out there with posters of you on their bedroom walls. It doesn't happen.
All right, so tell us what's next for you. I saw a post you're kind of thinking about writing a book. So tell us what's next in your
okay, so
I know you also talked about starting a new sort of creative offering. So just kind of give us an idea of what you're going to be doing in the next year or so.
Okay, so the book has been, I was in chats with a publisher, and that sort of just went somewhere, just disappeared into the ether. So I decided to take control of the situation. I'm just going to do it myself. So I reached out to my audience on LinkedIn saying, has anyone got any advice? And I got so much great advice from people who've done it. And so many people were so generous with their advice and input. And I was really appreciative of that. So it cleared my head up about, okay, self-publish. And you chimed in as well. I mean, so many people are like, no, you should do it this way. And so I'm going to do that about creativity and creative leadership. I've got a couple of ideas ready to go, but I've got to get number one out first. So get that done first. So that's on the priority agenda. A new creative offering. I got inspired, believe it or not, by reading an article about Nine Inch Nails and how they're starting a new creative company called With T. And it was an interview in GQ, and they're saying, well, we got bored and we want to do something different. And I was thinking, I got bored too. Maybe I should do something different. So I want to do something different, reinvent the wheel. I want to see how I can make it different. I don't want anything big. I want it to start small, stay small. That's my rule. And try different things. And maybe it can be educational for some others. If I make something work in one way, I go, oh, that works. And if I fail in some other area, I go, well, that didn't work. So here's a lesson.
Yeah.
So there's that. I'm about to jump into that feet first, see where it takes me. And the next one is continuing with like education, mentoring, helping creative people who want to come to the next level. So from all levels, from people starting out to people that might be midway career and a bit stuck or a bit lost and don't really know how to elevate from there. And then the ones that really want to be a creative leader and creative director, and maybe help get them in the right mindset so as they don't suck at it, basically. So, help them suck less at doing, because there's going to be times when it's going to suck and you're going to suck, but it's going to happen. You've got to be a realist. And again, as you said, maybe help people understand why it's important to park the ego. And like we've all made, you and I both, I'm sure, can say we've made mistakes throughout our career. We've screwed up. We've made the wrong decisions. We've done that. That's the learning curve. If you haven't done that, And that's, again, comes back to why you need senior people in leadership helping, because they've made the mistakes. So they can help you navigate your way around them. That's the beauty of having experienced people in the agencies.
Yeah.
So that's hopefully agencies wake up to that. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, thanks for what you're doing. I feel like we're kindred spirits in that sense, and that we feel, the need to kind of give back to the next generation. So I look forward to, checking in with you from time to time. I'm rooting for you. I'm gonna be real curious to see what is next for you. And thanks for making the time to be on the show. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much. I mean, this is a lot of fun, and I agree with you. I mean, we're connected online, and I think we are kindred spirits. There's a lot of similarities in how we think and what we do, and I'm so stoked that you have this podcast. I think there needs to be more of this kind of stuff going on, and more discussions, and more, insights and stories from people that have done it, and maybe that helps encourage other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we'll have to do another podcast just on music and the love of a black and the love of a good black T-shirt. I'm in that. If I do nothing else with my life, I am going to find the best black T-shirt. I'm getting close. I've found some good ones, but that's my quest. Maybe I should start a black T-shirt company.
We should talk, because that's actually one of the things on my agenda as part of my company, like creating the ultimate black T-shirt. Because I actually think creative firms, there's something we didn't talk about, but I think creative firms just one aside before we go. I don't understand why we don't create our own brands and our own products. Like, I don't.
Well, I have one, and I have one, and I haven't announced it yet. But as soon as we're done recording here, I'll tell you a little bit about that. But I agree with you. I think we need to create some more. I've had a couple guys on the show from an agency called Major in New York who started of all things, a plant food company. Right. But they did a really cool take on it. It's called oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank here, but it's very clever, and they're doing great, and they're had fun, and they're making stuff. And I agree, we all need to make our own stuff.
We should be doing it. Do you know the fashion brand called Acne? Acne, ACNE.
No.
Global fashion brand, right? And very successful. That's an ad agency. So an ad agency started that with their own logo because the creative director couldn't find jeans he liked. So he started making his own. And they've since sold the agency to one of the big consulting firms, but they've kept the fashion brand. But Acne is part of an ad agency. So it can be done. It can be done.
It can be done. And then, let's talk about this black T-shirt. Now I can't stop talking, but I've also wanted to create, the creative director's warehouse, which is basically just like a place where you can just find like cool stuff for creative. And I've kind of done it. I have a page on my website where I have some, links to books and stuff, but I'm talking about like clothes or, it's like, if you're a creative director, you got to come here. We got black frames. We've got black T-shirts. We've got black Converse. We've got everything you need. Just come here to Creative Director's Warehouse.
I think you could create a really funny promo for your podcast with that. Actually, I think that's something you should think about. It's like I think it could be quite a funny skit, fun ad. So we'll talk more about the T-shirts after. But,
all right,
fantastic.
Thanks, Rod.
All right,
Thanks for being on the show. Take care and keep cool.
Much.
Keep cool. Keep cool down there. Get yourself a nice ice cold beverage.
So I will.
Take care. And that's going to do it for the 69th episode of Confessions of a Creative Director. Thanks to my very special guest and kindred spirit, Rodd Chant. Rod, we're going to start that company and create the world's best creative director black T-shirt. So more to come on that, folks. Hey, 69 episodes. That's pretty good, huh? We're going to be reaching 70 here pretty soon. I want to invite you to support the show. You can do that in a couple of different ways. You can join my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Confessions of a Creative Director for just $5 to help support the show. You can buy a copy of my book, What's the Big Idea? An Indispensable Guide to Becoming a Kick-Ass Creative Director. It's available on Amazon and Audible. You can sign up for one-on-one coaching. And of course, at the very basic level, follow me subscribe to the podcast, tell all your friends. Definitely want to grow this podcast. It's a labor of love, so I need all your encouragement and all your support. All right, folks, that's going to do it. Until next time, peace, love, and creativity. See ya.